How do we judge? How do we choose? How do we respond? White supremacy, false pride, black pride, gay pride, the noblest of virtues or deadly sin. Pride has a social history. Pride is seen as raising us above timidity to achieve higher goals, but it is also seen as a stumbling block to humility. Alternatively, it can be seen as the ladder to prejudice and hate. And then again, it has the power to raise us above historic, cultural, and social shaming. These are all complicated moral and ethical self-referential judgments, comparing myself, my social self, to others. Recent historical events have shown how pride is a highly emotional engagement with the world that often leads to intolerance and chaos. These complicated moral and ethical self-referential judgments are often contradictory, depending on particular circumstances. Judgments of hate speech and freedom of expression are often heavily dependent on the status of the person involved. A world-class athlete who is gay can be lauded and celebrated within the very same society that has strong homophobic tendencies. Winning makes a difference. We wince at the hate speech and intolerance from any underprivileged group or person, but quietly look the other way. That same hate speech and intolerance from the privileged and wealthy brings instant condemnation and retaliation. Class and background make a difference. Pride, honor, shame, embarrassment, guilt, liability, and justice. These are all concepts that involve the self and the social self within the context of particular historical and cultural settings. These concepts refine the embers of the powers of wrath. Resolving conflict in these areas is often frustrating and exhausting. When we come to recognize this, we come to acknowledge that progress of our global society, with all its many challenges, will only be made from the stance of spiritual humility and mutual respect. The book of Ecclesiastes warns that there is no cure for the proud person's malady. Evil has taken root in them. In the second reading, St. Paul admonishes the Hebrew community that in this new kingdom of God, within the community of the Church, we have all become equal before God, who is the one and only supreme judge, with Jesus as the mediator. One of the problems that beset the early Christian communities were the disputes at the Eucharistic meal of the rich looking after themselves and disputes over precedence in a highly segregated society. These difficulties were responsible for the way the ritual community meal developed into the ritual format meal we now know as the Eucharist. This Thanksgiving was the name that emerged in the 2nd century for this specific religious ritual. Luke was fully aware of these difficulties, as in Acts he presents an idealized original period that he wants communities to take as their model, and how they should behave at this meal. Hearing this gospel today at our Sunday Eucharist is a direct invitation to us to evaluate how our community practices at our sacred meal measures up to Jesus' teaching. The characteristics call for humility. Everyone must act with humility. The practical consequences of this is that everyone must see themselves as the servants of the community, rather than those whom the community might feel honored to serve. There must be no pandering or favoritism for the rich or the powerful. Around the Lord's table there is a state of equality for all who are equally there by God's invitation, grace and mercy. There must be a welcome in the community for the needy and all those signified by the phrase, the poor, the cripple, the lame and the blind. This means that the community must be making special efforts to see that no individual or group is excluded from the Lord's meal, or made to feel that they are not our sort, they do not belong. A tone of genuine welcome and a spirit of service to the one another should be a palpable quality of the assembly. Body language, eye contact, and tone of voice must be one that we use with those whom we hold dear. Community must be aware of the danger of small clique running the parish, so that the community's assembly is only an excuse for their needs for self-importance to be fulfilled. Asking these questions can be difficult, but the more these questions are feared, the more they are needed, and the more there is need for the community to hear today's gospel. The sin warned again in the very beginning of the Bible is to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The moment I sit on the throne of judgment, where I know with certitude who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, then I am capable of the greatest evil, while not thinking it of evil at all. The cloud of unknowing says that first we have to enter into that cloud of forgetting all our certitudes, all our labels, all our explanations, whereby we've put this person in this box, this group is going to heaven, this race is superior to that race. This is a waste of time. It is usually just our ego projecting itself, announcing itself, and protecting itself. It has little to do with objective reality or real love of the truth. As we seek the path of truth, we are unsure and often stumble. And then there is death, and nothing will ever be the same again. A grandparent dies, and suddenly nothing will ever be the same again. A parent dies, our hearts are shattered, and all our proud plans and posturing now means nothing. A sibling dies, the icy grip of death's tentacles touch our hearts, and nothing will ever be the same again. A spouse, a life partner dies, and part of us also dies, and nothing will ever be the same again. Yes, death breaks our heart, but it's only through the cracks of a broken heart that our love becomes less and less selfish. It is only through these cracks of a broken heart that we become a humbler people, a more compassionate community. The community of a church without a broken heart, without humility, without compassion, has nothing to say to our world of today. The Lord grant you peace.